and welcome in to another episode of Irrational Confidence. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow host and friend, Caelan. But as you can see, we are down a man this week. Lino was doubtful with carpal tunnel syndrome, and he is out for today's podcast. We hope he will be able to return
He
with
is
some much
aggressively
needed
online, so
R&R.
I think
He
that makes sense.
is. He is probably wrapping presents to probably all kind of issues. So, Lino, get well soon. We will persevere. As we do on every episode, we'll start with some news and notes. And honestly, during this part of the season, it's pretty much all injuries, but there were some positive injury news. We had some people coming back. So, to get into everything, we do start on a sad note. Grant Williams suffered a torn ACL, so he'll be out for the season. So Charlotte, a team that is already pretty injured, is going to be dealing with some more injuries there. Kristaps Porzingis is back, which was pretty surprising to me. I thought they'd wait maybe till January to start ramping him up, but he came back before December, so that was surprising. Seems like he's looking pretty good. I'm sure they'll be very cautious with how much they play him. Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal came back from their injuries, which Phoenix desperately needed them back. They had dropped several games without them. Beal is already out again with injury management, so I think that'll kind of just be how his season goes. Lonzo Ball is back. I believe it was a wrist sprain, and that's an interesting one to monitor, less because of the Chicago Bulls playoff implications, but more because it seems like Chicago is very much open for business. I think they will be the team the trade deadline kind of starts with as far as Vucevic, Levine, and Lonzo. So definitely a fun team to kind of keep an eye on if you're hoping your squad wants to make a deal. Speaking of deals, the Sacramento Kings signed Jay Crowder and immediately started him, which created a very funny graphic. I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter, but the Sacramento Kings official account tweeted out their starting five and had to use a picture of Jay Crowder in a Milwaukee Bucks uniform, which was pretty funny. So definitely check that out if you haven't seen it. And then Cam Thomas suffered a hamstring injury, the Brooklyn Nets guard, so he'll be out 3 to 4 weeks. Pretty big loss for them. Obviously, one of their better players and certainly their best scorer. And then LaMelo Ball is going to miss 2 weeks with a calf strain. So like we referenced with Grant Williams, Charlotte's already dealing with a lot of injuries, and now they're going to be missing their best player. So we'll see how they kind of deal with that. I think they're going to deal with it by trying to get Cooper Flag, but we'll see how that all unfolds. And now we'll get to kind of the majority of what this discussion is going to be for this episode, which is some Los Angeles Lakers talk. That is Caelan's squad. And honestly, I think because so many people talk about the Lakers, we don't end up talking about them that much on the show. So
Right.
we kind of set this episode aside to do a deep dive, see how the season's looking so far, what our expectations are going to be going forward. So, Caelan, I thought a good place to start for this one is to kind of compare this season's team to last season's team. It's mostly the same pieces. Obviously, the head coach is a big switch. They're trying some different lineups. So just from kind of a macro view, what have you seen that's different for this season's Lakers?
Yeah, you know what? This is a good question, and I think it's an interesting question because a lot of the issues, to be honest, are kind of the similar as last year. Some of the things that we're seeing, but they are having much better movement on offense in terms of just like running plays, running set plays, and um, obviously, the big talk has been how they've been playing through AD, which has been totally true, and it's still been true, and AD's has stepped up. Guys like Austin Reeves, I think, have benefited greatly from JJ Redick. Seems like he's really got a plan to get him open looks, and he's had an opportunity to kind of increase his rapport with Anthony Davis this season, which has been really good. He's been better at finding AD down low. I feel like last year it was really kind of surprisingly, it was kind of D'Angelo Russell outside of LeBron that would always look for AD, but part of that was kind of their substitution patterns. I feel like D'Lo would always kind of stay on the court with AD, and then AR would kind of stay on the court with LeBron, and they would kind of match up. So this year we're seeing more Austin Reeves and AD 2-man game, which has been really good. So that's been different. I think that JJ has been a big improvement. I would say that some nights it still feels like the number one thing any coach for the Lakers has to figure out is how to get them to play 48 minutes. on a night to night basis. Recently they've been like blown out by the Nuggets and the Suns as well, and part of it is just the Suns have way more perimeter athleticism and perimeter scoring, and that's the Lakers' weakness right now is their perimeter talent. Um, but a lot of it is just 6 minute stretches. A lot of times it's in the third quarter where this team just can't be bothered to get back in transition. You know, you want to talk about the athleticism and things of that nature, and obviously that would help to have better athletes. But some of it's just want to, you know. Braun's only going to do so much. He's a guy. When Braun turns the ball over, he's not getting back on defense. He's just not. And it's so funny because we always highlight the chase down block. And he'll still have one every now and then, but there's like 6 or 7 turnovers in between there where he just doesn't even try. So that's like rough. And Austin Reeves is slow. I talked about at the start of the year, this is a slow-footed basketball team. But all in all, I think that most of the changes that we do see have been positive. So that has been good to see. Have you noticed anything that I didn't jump on?
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk to you specifically about the transition defense. I was
Yeah.
kind of looking at the Lakers' overall numbers, and I saw that they have the kind of horrible combination of their really bad offensive rebounding team and their really bad transition defense team. Usually, you're emphasizing one of those, and you kind of sacrifice the other. So I wanted to
Hmm.
ask you. I mean, like you laid out well that there's some of it's just a talent slash roster construction thing, but
Yeah.
do you think it would be better for the Lakers to try and attack the offensive glass since they're already getting killed in transition? Do you see anything they could maybe try and do differently to help or at least counteract that flaw?
Yeah. So, and this is funny. So, this is actually, this is the same problem they had last year. And the solution this year was supposed to be that, JJ wanted the guys in the corner to crash and help with the offensive rebounding. Um, I felt like early on in this season we were seeing a little bit of that. I feel like guys have kind of waned a little bit, and the transition defense. Some of it, I just feel like guys aren't getting back, like guys aren't hustling. So you can't be bad at both of those things, right? Like that makes no sense.
Right.
Like if you're a bad transition team, generally it's because you are putting a lot of effort to grab offensive boards. So doing neither one of those things is a problem. And it's funny because the Lakers, for all their defensive woes, if they can get set, they're actually not bad. I'm not telling you they're good. They're still not a good defensive team, but they're actually not bad. If they can get set, they obviously have Anthony Davis, who's a good defensive player, a great rebounder. LeBron can still rebound at a high level. Um, Whenever Rui's in there, Rui is an athletic player, he can rebound. So they have guys. Dalton Connect's been helping on the rebounds. Max Christie can rebound. So they have like some of the tools to be successful. But if they don't get their defense set, then it's just very difficult to overcome that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that was something I looked at too because I was wondering. I was like, okay, how much is the poor transition defense hurting their defense overall? Right now, per Cleaning the Glass, they're 23rd in defensive rating,
yeah,
and Cleaning the Glass has this cool feature where you can sort by just half court defense, and it is better. I think it's well now it's down to 18th, so it's only slightly better, but you can see that they could be better on that end. And honestly, we watched the Oklahoma City game specifically with kind of the emphasis of this show being on that game. And I was pleasantly surprised. I haven't watched a lot of Lakers this
hmm
year. And so I see that they're 23rd in defense. And I'm like, oh, it must just be terrible. But I thought a lot of the guys were trying, especially the lesser defenders. I felt like we're putting in good multiple efforts like Reeves, Connect, D'Lo. Those guys I think were trying to be in the right place. And as a Heat fan, we see it. Like Duncan Robinson's almost always in good defensive position,
yeah,
but he's just a little slow footed. He's not athletic. So, even if you do the right thing, sometimes you're just limited physically. So, but I thought the defense looked better than I thought it would. I think the Lakers ended up being like 16th in defense last year. I think that's attainable, and
yeah.
if they could keep the offense as potent as it's looked, I think that could help a lot. And I don't think I said at the top. Right now, the Lakers are 7th in offense, 23rd in defense. And that kind of brings me to another thing I want to talk to you about, which is the lineups they play, and maybe specifically the lineups they emphasize, we could say. So whether that's a starting lineup, the closing lineup, what groups have you seen that you really like how they work together? Or maybe you want to see more because you think they could work together.
Yeah, so crazy enough, man. I do believe I'm buying all the Dalton Connect stock. I'm drinking all the Dalton Connect Kool-Aid. I think he is as good as he has looked. You know, obviously he's not gonna, score 25 points a game, but he is like a real deal shooter. Like I've really been wanting the Lakers to acquire. You know, Austin Reeves is a guy who can make threes. That's pretty much everybody on the Lakers. You know, a guy who can make threes, but connects a real shooter. So that's really been a bright spot, and I think he definitely belongs in a starting lineup alongside the big three of Reeves, Braun, and AD. I think the fifth starter probably isn't on this team if they're gonna do something in the playoffs. I just think that they really need a more athletic perimeter player, a more really just somebody in that Cam Reddish spot who Cam Reddish is doing his best. Shout out to Cam, but he's just he's not talented enough to really be a full time starter. So uh, and it was interesting because I was watching Sam Vecini and Jason Timpf this morning because they had a little Lakers episode, and um, Sam was kind of throwing out some newish names. There's always the retread, Zach LaVine and Trey Young names that people attach to the Lakers, but Sam threw out Bruce Brown, which I thought was an interesting name, and that's kind of along the vein that I'm thinking that we need, like a perimeter guy that can really guard and kind of shore up. The reason that the Lakers sent D'Lo to the bench, outside of him just playing poorly, is just the redundancy of him and AR. It's just going to limit your, offense and defense, to be completely honest. So a guy like Bruce Brown, I do think would be interesting, but ultimately, like if it's not going to be somebody that we bring in, then probably I guess you would just keep starting Cam Reddish, um, and just hope it works out because I don't know. I think Rui is he's just too limited in his in his side to side movement on defense, and he's not a guy who can get around screens and really guard those really scorers like KD and Book and all those guys. So.
Yeah, I have in my notes, and I wanted to kind of pose this question to you almost rhetorically, but it's is Austin Reeves the most consistently overmatched defender in the NBA?
Okay, so
Because it feels like and it's not his fault. Like I said, he's trying, but like put on the Oklahoma City game, and it's like, oh, I guess he got cross matched with Shea in transition, and then I watched the next possession off a made basket, and I'm like, oh no, he's just on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. But you look around,
yeah,
it's like, who else would be? You know?
right, and that's really why they inserted Cam into the starting lineup, because yes, he definitely was the most like consistently overtasked player on defense, and it was so funny, dude. That the first three games of this season, that it really was almost like a different universe. Like that first game, Austin Reeves guarded Anthony Edwards for the majority of that game against the Timberwolves, and he did pretty well. Like the defense was very solid. And yeah, that just didn't hold up at all. It was just one good game. So yeah, I think that's probably the main thing outside of a perimeter player, because obviously that's what the vast majority of the NBA is looking to add, a two-way perimeter guy. Outside of that, I would say trying to find a big that can play, behind Anthony Davis, or even do some small ball stuff. Again, Sam Vecini had threw out Dorian Finney-Smith. That would like that would be like a good archetype. He's kind of about the player that you want. He can definitely play the 4 or the 5. Give you good energy, all those good things. So like that's kind of a player that would be helpful. And the Lakers are a tough judge because if you've watched this team like I have, you know that listen, they're 11-8. That's good. There are some other teams that expected to be winning that are not quite there, but at the same time, the Lakers have beat the Sixers without Joel Embiid. They beat the Raptors twice. They beat the Spurs twice. They beat Memphis without Ja Morant. Right, so they have a lot of fluff wins outside of the first 3 games of the season where they beat 3 playoff teams. They have not beaten another good team, and a lot of their losses have been blowout losses. Blowout losses to good teams. So they're kind of a tough judge right now. Like going into the playoffs as is, like they're probably not very serious. But at the same time, one connecting piece makes them a championship contender. And we saw that in Darvin Ham's first year, which was the second year of Russ when they sent him out, and that was the year they started 2-12. They were terrible that year. They make a trade and a few pieces here and there. None of those pieces they acquired were game breaking pieces, right? But it just kind of connected things. And when you have Brown and AD on your team, right, that's kind of what you're looking to do. You're looking to kind of just find that connecting piece, and you never know how good this team can get. So I'm kind of curious, like where are you at on their ceiling? They do have a couple picks, and they do have a couple tradable contracts, and D'Lo and Rui Hachimura is especially tradable. Um, so they do have ability to improve. Do you see this team making a big leap if they can find the right piece, or do you think they're kind of dead in the water?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I pulled it up on Dunks and Threes. They have a cool strength of schedule stat that takes
Mhm,
into account like who actually played, not just the team itself. And the Lakers have had the 12th hardest schedule so far, so it's not like it's been cupcakes for sure. And all the
mhm,
Western Conference teams, obviously, their schedules are going to look harder. And they're 15th in strength of schedule adjusted net rating, which I think it feels about right. They're in the middle of the pack. They can beat up on the weaker teams, and they might
yeah,
struggle against some of the higher end teams. So yeah, the ceiling for this team, I mean, Anthony Davis is at such a high level right now on both ends of the court. It does feel like they're a missing piece away from us, like having him in top 5 MVP conversations, like towards the end of the season, which he's
mhm,
already been in some early MVP conversations. But it'll just be interesting. I think the Jazz trade that you gave the example of is a perfect example of what they should strive for in a trade. I do think trades like that are very rare. Again, as a Heat fan, I think we're kind of hoping for the same kind of thing. It's like we know we can't get another star, but for the Heat, it was the Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala trade in 2020 when they traded Justice Winslow for those guys, and it was just enough perimeter defense and kind of a stretch four next to Bam that allowed them to make that finals run. And yeah, I think the Lakers, they could. I like the Bruce Brown idea a lot. I'm pretty high on Reeves. I've watched him a little more closely
really?
this year. Yeah, every season I try and really pay attention to guards that are very efficient at layups. I just think that's a really valuable skill. And Reeves shoots like 70% at the basket every season. And part of that is he's such a good foul drawer. So a lot of his like tougher shots end up not counting as a miss because he gets fouled. But it's just super impressive because you look at like the best rim finishers in the league and you see guys like, obviously for bigs, it's like Giannis, LeBron, but even for guards, it's very athletic guys, Anthony Edwards, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And then there's just always Reeves right up there with him. And it's like, this guy he's not getting hardly any dunks. It's not like
Yeah.
that's upping his field goal percentage, but he's very crafty and just has great touch. So I think Reeves, if he's your third offensive option, I think you could still be a high level playoff team.
Mhm,
But to me, and this is funny because this is such like a ESPN question, but I do feel like maybe this season more than any other, we've started to see more consistent signs of LeBron slowing down. It doesn't
mhm.
mean the great games still don't come, but I do feel like we're seeing a few more like, oh, just 14 points tonight. Or it might have been with a triple double, but it's like the scoring's a little down, the turnovers seem up. So I think this team's ceiling is probably most dependent on Anthony Davis. But what have you seen from LeBron? And do you think with a playoff schedule, with the days off, he'll still be able to get to the level he needs to? What do you think the upside is there?
So that's what they say, right? Like that's what they're always going to sell you is that, yeah, hey, listen, the plan, we want to manage LeBron. And I get it. It definitely makes sense. LeBron's he's a maddening player to root for at, at this stage. Um, what I see from him is that he's saying, listen, I'm gonna do my best to take care of my responsibility and play well. Like, I need you guys to come along. If you're not coming, then like we're gonna lose. So, like, hit shots, play defense. Like, I know what to do and I know how to get myself there. It doesn't mean that he's like guaranteed to have a lot of success. Like you mentioned, some of the scoring. some of it is driven by, he's just not taking a lot of shots. Some of it, I don't know, man. If he just can't get to where he wants, some of his shots aren't falling. So he has been a bit of a maddening watch. At the end of the game, if you just look at the box score, he looks like, oh yeah, same old Bron. But a lot of games I watch, I'm like, God, he's kind of killing us. His turnovers. I mean, you saw it again in the game against OKC. God, what are those turnovers? They're just strange. Like the call in the
Yeah.
air, which the ref doesn't have to call that, but he did call it, and it was close, but
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
will
just
say that Oklahoma City game was weirdly officiated to
it,
me. They were
it
like
was really
very
officiated.
strict on violations and very relaxed on free throws. Like there were a couple drives. I mean, it's always been this way with LeBron, but I mean, got hacked by
Oh
Lou
yeah,
Dort, like on his shoulder.
the
Not
Lou
even like
Dort
it could
one,
have been
yeah,
part
the
of the
Lou Dort one was
ball.
crazy.
And it just didn't. It's just no call. Which I mean, he's always had to deal with that. But I think as he gets older and he has less advantages over everyone, it's like, okay, guys, like it's definitely a foul. You could give it to him. And
I need
I
those
think,
now. Actually, like
right,
I need all my calls.
yeah.
Actually,
And with LeBron, I think it's interesting because, I think by the time he was probably, 24, maybe even younger, there was no player in the league that was as strong as him and as fast as him. So
yeah,
whatever defender you put on him, he had an advantage. And I feel like the number of those players that he has that advantage over is just getting smaller as the years go on. I always think about I think it was his last year in Cleveland, that Indiana series where they put Bojan Bogdanovic on him and he couldn't really blow by Bojan. And like Bojan's pretty strong and was more athletic back then. But I was like, man, like 2014 LeBron. It would like he
yeah.
wouldn't even do a move and he would just zoom by somebody. He'd do that little like hesitation he does that no one falls for, but then he'd just fly by people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as he's lost that speed element, it does limit. I'm not saying he's matchup dependent. He's the best player ever. He can still do what he wants, but it does seem like there's less easy buckets out there. And it really seems like it's more when he's in the post, when he's really comfortable with his strength advantage that you see the big games, maybe for him, but also just him creating advantages. In the Oklahoma City game, they had a pretty long stretch with Hartenstein out, and they were basically playing like Dylan Jones at center.
Yeah.
And that was one of the times LeBron was most aggressive. He had a drive from the top of the key that was basically just an ISO. He had a couple post ups. And it's not like he scored 10 points in 5 minutes, but you could tell he recognized, okay, there's no rim protector. All these guys are smaller than me. I'm just going to play bully ball, make them send help, and then, spray out to shooters like he's done his whole life. So it's interesting to watch him kind of navigate having less physical advantages.
Dude, the Suns. It was the second time we played the Suns. They put Ryan Dunn on them, and I was like, holy cow! Like Ryan Dunn had an excellent. And as a matter of fact, that was the game where LeBron had 7 points deep into the fourth quarter, and the announcers started talking about his streak, and he ended up hitting
Right.
a three, and I think he finished for like 10 points that game. So yeah, he's been an interesting watch for sure. I feel like I have to say this. I just hope we trade Gabe Vincent. I'm
Sure.
done. I'm done with the Gabe Vincent
Understandable.
project. I'm just ready to cut bait. I don't even think that he's like not an NBA player. I don't think he's like his career is over. The way when we had Kendrick Nunn and we traded him to the Wizards for Rui Hachimura, I knew his career was over. I knew it. Like he was not an NBA
Right.
player. I don't necessarily feel that way about Gabe Vincent, but good lord, his shot is just not going in, and I just think that he's not going to be able to make it work in LA. I almost feel bad for him because like he had so much opportunity in Miami, and it wasn't even just hey, make some shots, it'll be helpful. It was hey, we need you to like get high like in the second and hit
Hmm.
2, 3 threes in a row, please. So like the way he was counted on, I feel like it gave him a different level of confidence, and we just don't need him to do that. We need him to just be steady and be ready when called upon. I feel like that's been tough for him. So
Yeah.
you guys can have Gabe Vincent back. I'm sorry. I don't know if you need him.
Is he an expiring now? Was it a 2-year deal that y'all signed
Yeah,
him
yeah,
to?
yeah. I'm
Okay,
pretty
so
sure.
probably a movable contract. Yeah, I hate it for Gabe. I was watching him pretty closely in the Oklahoma City game just because you see all these posts from all these like aggregation Twitter accounts where it's like 0 points for the fifth straight game, and I was like, man, is he just like But a lot of it's low usage, like you were saying. He's not like running a second unit or anything. He's mostly just spotting up. He's almost in like a Pat Bev kind of role. He's basically just like trying to pick up full court, hound the other team's like backup point guard, and then spot up for jumpers. And yeah, he still doesn't look right physically to me. And there's a long term injury. He might not ever look how he did for the Heat a few
Yeah.
years ago. So yeah, I hope he can get it right. But it was sad to see because it just looked like it wasn't clicking for him. I think in the OKC game he hit like one pull up two, and I think that was about it.
Yeah, and I think another big wild card for this team is going to be Jared Vanderbilt. I mean, God knows what he looks like at this point. It's been
Right.
2 years, I feel like, since he's played basketball. It's been a long time. And, even when he was playing consistently, obviously not an offensive threat, he was working on his game. Like, I could see it was coming together. It was starting to click for him offensively. He was figuring out when to cut, how to be effective on the court as a player who's not being looked at, which has its own advantages. But now he's going to be completely out of rhythm. I just don't know, like, if he can give us anything. And if you don't mind, I did want to give a Bronny update.
Okay.
So people may have seen this or may not. Bronny's only playing in home games for the South Bay Lakers, the Lakers G League affiliate. He obviously does not play in NBA games. He's not there. Ooh, what the hell is going on with this? How do you guys expect him to improve? Like, this is a guy we drafted. I understand it's a late second round pick, so chances are he probably never helps this team anyway. But at the same time, it is an asset that you used. Like we should be developing this. So I don't understand why he's only playing in home games. He needs to get on the court. He needs reps.
Yeah, I was wondering that as well. I honestly, because of how toxic Bronny discourse is, I really don't ever look into anything going on with him. I just hope he's doing well, but kind of stay out of it. But I did see this update, and I have seen that it's not like an official statement from the Lakers. It was like a reporter was saying this is what he's heard. So maybe because of this pushback, the Lakers will let him play games outside of South Bay. But yeah, is it? I don't know if it's like a security thing. Like, I mean, G League teams, they're flying like commercial, so I do get like Bronny James, getting on Delta Airlines, like could be a safety hazard. Like people would probably freak out. So I just wonder what kind of is going into that. Because yeah, in my mind, I'm just like, you want as many reps as possible. So I don't know. I just feel bad for Bronny. I just yeah. I don't know if you've seen the Creed movie, but Apollo Creed or Adonis Creed is Apollo Creed's son, but he
Yeah,
doesn't fight with that last name because he wants to like make his own name. I was like, I wish Bronny could just do that. He could just be like Bronny Smith or something.
Bronny
just,
Smith. Yeah,
just like just figure out if he's going to be an NBA player on his own without all
it,
everything else going on.
it is tough. It is tough. What I will say is, my dog barking here. What I will say is that I so when he did play, for South Bay, when I was looking at South Bay's roster, obviously I don't know what other G League rosters look like, but the Lakers roster for their G League team is actually kind of nice. They have some good players. They have the guy, Olivier, I can't pronounce his name correctly, but the guy who was hitting all the threes in the preseason. They have Maxwell Lewis, the young guy from Pepperdine, who they drafted, who's like in that weird spot that players can get in where they're like awesome G League players, but still not quite there for the NBA. That's kind of where he is. So I haven't checked outside of the first game, but the first game they were all like really dominant. Like everybody was really having a lot of success, and I think Bronny was still like. And this is my thing with Bronny, bro. You can't. This is like my thing. You can't be like I don't know. You can't be like a career role player. Like you have to be like a really good high school player that couldn't be a number one option in the NBA, so he ended up becoming a role player. Ronnie's a role player even in the G League. I just he like plays a role player role. Like you can't be serving Maxwell Lewis and Quincy. Like you have to be a guy. So I don't know. It's oh yeah, and they have I was forgetting the other guy. It's Hood Shafino is the other player
Yeah.
that's on South Bay. So, like in fairness to Brian, like they have like three guys on the team that are gonna be demanding a lot of. But I don't know. It's
Yeah. No, that's a good distinction though. I mean, we've talked about on the show before how many high profile prospects that kind of are busts, quote unquote, or flame out, turn into 3-and-D guys. Like Dennis Smith Jr. did that.
right.
We're seeing Dante Exum when he's healthy. That's kind of the niche he's carved out. So, and even Gabe Vincent, it's a different kind of example, but he was a go-to scorer at UC Santa Barbara. Then was on the Stockton Kings, with like almost led the G League in scoring, and then the Heat were like, "Hey, if you can't defend, you're just not going to play. Like, we're
Yeah,
not going to give you shots."
yeah.
Then he turned himself into a 3-and-D guy. So, yeah, I mean, as somebody with more of like a basketball encyclopedic mind could probably come up with like, I mean, I don't know. Even Avery Bradley was like one of the leading scorers in the nation in high school. Like, it's just rare, like you're saying, that you're just a role player through and through the whole way. So,
Right, and I almost
yeah,
feel like he was aiming for that because, like, in a weird way, because his dad's such a smart player, and it was almost like, well, I'm going to be like a really smart player. I'm going to always make the right decision, and it's like, bro, in high school, like that's not what you should be doing. To be honest, like the coaches in
and
the NBA and in college, they can coach that out of you. They can coach you up, but like, you should be getting buckets, young man. To be
yeah, and I feel like Sierra Canyon, like, I didn't watch their games, but he was like a top 10 prospect in the class, right? I mean, he was probably getting busy there.
No, I see. I feel like this is like a mistake that people make. I don't think he was a top 10 prospect in his class. I feel like he was maybe like top 10 at his position or something like that. I really don't
Oh,
feel
okay.
like he was ever like, oh man, okay, yeah, like this is gonna be somebody that's gonna be a lottery pick. I feel like the height
Mhm.
of Bronny was the McDonald's All American game. He got in there, hit a couple threes, looked like athletically like he belonged with the rest of the top high school talent. And I feel like from that point on, and obviously fairness to him, he had a major medical thing with his heart. But that was
Right.
kind of like the height of like where we saw Bronny reach, and from there it's kind of been a struggle. It's a struggle in a kind of a weird USC team, and obviously he's a
He
super weird
was
situation in the
he was
NBA. So
20th. He was 20th in the ESPN top 100 high
okay,
school
20th,
recruits. And, not to, like, do whatever, but if he wasn't LeBron's son, he's probably 40th or something.
yeah,
So, I think he was a legitimate high school prospect. I think the heart condition definitely, like, threw off his ascension into maybe becoming the player he was going to. So I don't
yeah,
know, I'm glad, like we're having a good conversation about it. Seems like the toxic stuff has mostly died down. I feel like people don't care as
yeah.
much, so maybe he'll have time to kind of figure out what his role is going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That's that's really about mostly what I have for the Lakers. Did you want to keep?
I don't have much more. I had a couple things.
Mhm.
Max Christie is somebody that
Yeah.
I thought looked pretty good in that OKC game, and I think the announcers mentioned that he had double figure scoring games in a few games. Have you seen like meaningful improvement from him this season?
Okay, so Max is. I had like really high hopes for Max because, like, as a utility player, a role player, like he has the physical tools for sure, and he knows how to leverage those tools to his advantage on the defensive end. He's a pretty strong player at this point. He's long, has the athleticism. Um, he's a guy like he's one of those block a jump shot type athletic, go after it defensively type guys. So he can be helpful. If I wish his shot was a little more consistent, but I think that he's a really poor passer. I just think every
Mhm.
NBA guard should know how to dribble pass shoot. I don't care what you're being asked of. Like if you're a guard in the NBA, there'll come a time when you're going to be out in space with the ball in your hand, and you're going to have to do something with it. And he's a really bad passer, and it's just almost comical at this point. He can't throw entry passes. He telegraphs like if there's a cutter, he's going to telegraph that pass. So that can be kind of rough on offense. I feel like that's why he doesn't play more. Um, and it's tough because I feel like if he had more reps, it could be beneficial for him. Like it's there. You want to see it. You see the flashes. He can be helpful, but I think as of right now, he'll have a limited role. Maybe injuries or something can give him more run. I think he just needs more opportunity, but he's gonna have to prove it when he gets it. which he hasn't done it consistently.
Gotcha. And then my last Laker question, and this is kind of a big picture question, but Brian Windhorst and a lot of other people have said this too, but I thought he said it really succinctly. He said on his podcast, Hoop Collective, that for the first, really until the trade deadline, so first 35, 40 games, LeBron and AD's mission was to show there's enough here to justify an all in trade. And I think you and I talked about, we believe the Lakers have at least 2 first round picks
Yeah,
they could trade. And now all in doesn't necessarily mean they trade everything they have for Zach LaVine or something, but it could be
dear
one
God.
first for Bruce Brown, one first for Dorian Finney-Smith. Or they so for you as a Laker fan, you're not like a LeBron fan. You're not somebody who's going to quit watching when he retires. You're invested in the future of this team as much as you are the present. Have you seen enough to where you would empty the cupboard, or you kind of like, I'd like to kind of half play it, do something to improve, but not go all in?
No, as a Lakers fan, I really don't want to do anything crazy. I really don't. And maybe I'm cynical. I started the season off just not a big fan of the team. Dalton Connect has been, something that I did not foresee. So that is good. I feel like if there was a smart trade, um, around the margins, I would love to do that, but I don't want to mortgage our future anymore because you know I just feel like Bron is at this stage. Bron is not enough to get it done, and I feel like Anthony Davis. I feel like sometimes I look at him and I'm like, man, he's thinking, damn, Bron did this every night for 20 seasons. This is a lot. Like he's having success, and that it's good to see. But some nights I feel like he is feeling beat up. I feel like he's like, man, my hip hurts, my shoulder hurts. I don't know about tonight. So with that being the case, just like too many teams more. Even if you did make a trade around the margins, like OKC is still so good. I mean, we lost to them at home in a NBA Cup game that we had to have. Their starting center is out. Our best player is a center. I feel like we should have won that game. And watching it, we definitely could have. I mean, the turnovers like continued to hurt, and it just felt like at the end of the day, like the other team made more plays and they had more energy than we do. Like we often like a tired team. So I think for me, I want to not be terrible for forever after LeBron leaves. So I just want to make a smart move if we can, but let's look ahead. Like AD isn't going anywhere after LeBron leaves. I think he can still be very good. So I want to make sure that AD has a player to play alongside of. We got Dalton Connect now. Like he's a real scorer. Like even after LeBron leaves, you don't have to be terrible. Like there's kind of a road to at least being relevant still. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that sentiment completely. Yeah. And honestly, with the way the new CBA is structured to incentivize teams and players to get extensions done, the advantage teams like the Lakers, the Knicks, the Heat used to have in free agency really isn't there anymore because there
No.
just aren't that many marquee free agents. Like, whether like a lot of people like to look at Anthony Edwards because he's in a small market. Minnesota looks kind of shaky. Ant's never going to be a free agent. Like he's going to keep signing
Right.
super maxes. And when
Right.
he's upset enough, he'll just demand the trade. And so
Yeah.
then at that point, you have to have enough to go get him. The way, I mean, it's on a smaller scale, but the way the Knicks had enough to get Bridges, to get Towns, like they wouldn't necessarily have been able just to add guys in free agency. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's smart to kind of keep the powder dry to a degree because guys will want to come to LA. You know that for sure. AD is a player guys would definitely want to play with. So yeah, I think hopefully, like you were saying, there's kind of a everything locks into place move that they can do without giving up too much.
Yeah,
So
that's the ultimate goal for sure.
yeah. Speaking of a team that has some moves to definitely contemplate,
Oh
we
boy.
wanted to end today's episode with a little Pelicans talk. The Pelicans are a tough team to talk about because they've been so injured this year, like unbelievably so. You really can't even see their full team out there. I don't think their core group has played at all together, except maybe that first game before
Right.
DeJounte got hurt. So, the Pelicans are an interesting situation. I'll kind of lay it out, and then Caelan, I want your thoughts on what you think, what you would do if you were David Griffin, if you were in control of the team. But essentially, the Pelicans are a couple million under the first apron, so they're not crazy expensive. But Zion still has 3 years at about 40 million left on his contract. CJ has another year at 30 million on his contract. Brandon Ingram's going to be a free agent, and that's why you've heard all the trade discussions. DeJounte Murray signed that extension not long ago. He's still got really 3 years at 30 million essentially. And then they have these young guys. They've got Herb Jones locked up for a long time. Trey Murphy will be there. Jordan Hawkins looks good. But it's what is the direction of this team? Zion played, I think, 70 games last year. Yeah, played 70 games last season, but the team was better when he was off the court. It wasn't like we finally got superstar Zion just because he happened to be healthy. The 2 seasons before that, he played 29 games combined. This season, he's dealing with another hamstring injury, which is very scary for him. Those have kept him out a really long time.
Yeah.
So first big picture question, is it time to blow it up for the Pelicans? And if it is, what does that look like to you? Who do you keep? Who do you try and move?
So the Pelicans GM is still David Griffin, right?
I believe so.
So, like, this is the issue. Like, you're gonna have to. I mean, you either trust David Griffin, or I guess you can bring in somebody else. But this is a lot to try and fix. This is like you have a ton of big decisions to make here. And this is why I wanted to talk about this. I think this is so infinitely interesting. Zion Williamson. I'm curious how much longer do you do this? And he already, if you believe like some of the reports around like the league, I feel like maybe a few off seasons ago, I feel like maybe it was Wesley Lombre that was saying that they were actively shopping him in the offseason, or like quietly trying to shop him in the offseason, and there were no takers for Zion, which is completely believable because, man, I really hate to be negative. I just don't think that he is meant for NBA basketball. He's just not gonna stay healthy because I don't know, man. That much torque. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but good God, I just feel like his size and the amount of power. I used to always watch some of like the Derrick Rose high school clips, and obviously this is hindsight, but I used to feel like the writing was on the wall in high school when some of his dunks, I would feel like his knee would always buckle even in high school, and I thought, oh, but this is too much torque and power. Like you can't handle it. I feel like if I'm the Pelicans, like look at Atlanta, who you just did the deal with. Like, wouldn't you want to be Atlanta right now? You saw they just advanced in the NBA Cup. With a couple wins over the Cavs, they beat the Celtics, right? So like they have an awesome young core, and this is truly a mess, and you don't have the young piece to build around because Zion's just not the guy. And it's funny. I've been trying to pay attention. I'm not a big college basketball guy, Micah. I'm wondering if you've paid attention at all to Cooper Flag. Have you
Mhm.
have you seen it at all? What are you thinking so far? I know it's early.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think Flag looks good. I think Duke is putting him in a tough spot because I think Cooper will be a 4 in the NBA. He reminds me a lot of like Chris Webber.
Mm,
And I think
mm,
Duke is basically have him like be their point guard.
yeah.
And because he is a good passer for his size,
Yes.
but anyway, so I think Duke is kind of doing him a disservice. I think he could look better if he was
Okay.
playing more of a natural position,
Okay.
but I
That's a
still
fair.
definitely have him as the 101. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, the Rutgers guys. Like there's some good other prospects in this class, but definitely still have Cooper in a tier by himself.
The am I the Pels do have their pick, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, that was something I should have noted too. The Pelicans, surprisingly, aren't in a bad position with their draft picks. They
Mhm.
basically have all their own picks. The only one they have possibly going out is one to Atlanta, but they had an extra pick from Milwaukee, and it's going to be the least favorable of those two. And I believe that's in 2027. So
Mhm.
basically, even if they're terrible, they'll just give Atlanta the Bucks pick, or whatever it may be. So they're actually in a pretty good spot draft wise, which I do think is why we could see some blow it up trades coming pretty quickly, just because it would be very easy for them to tank. And I think that's why Zion's interesting, because obviously the health is the health, but he also is kind of the perfect star, if you want to call him that, to tank with, because it's like he's not going to be out there. I mean, it's like you might as well just keep him on the roster and maybe he gets healthy and then Flag and Zion. That actually kind of makes sense in the front court. You got somebody that can, be a dominant defensive force besides Zion. But yeah, what you were saying about Zion, to me, I think the most interesting comparison as far as trading him is to think about Kawhi Leonard before the Toronto trade.
Mm-hmm.
And Kawhi had shown at that point that in 2017, I believe it was, he arguably was the best player in the NBA. He could have won that MVP when Russ did that season. And Zion hasn't shown that. I feel like if Zion had shown that, you'd just be like, all right, it's worth it to like take an L this season, hope he gets healthy. Or if you're another team, you're like, hey, we'll give up all these draft picks. Like it's worth it. This guy could turn us into a legit title contender almost by himself. And Zion hasn't shown that. And he also is just a tough fit. He kind of
Yeah.
has to play the four, but he's not a good defender. So you have to play a five next to him, but then that's not a lot of shooting. So
Nope.
you really need like Porzingis or Miles Turner. Like you need that elusive stretch five that can hit threes and protect the rim. And there's like three of those that are good in the NBA. So I don't know. It's a tough situation. I wanted to ask you kind of specifically. And this is weird to contextualize, but what's the least you would take back in a trade for Zion? Like if somebody
Oh,
like
that's a great question.
he makes 40 million. Would you just he makes it for the next 3 seasons after this? Would you take a $40 million expiring contract back for him? Nothing else. You just get off the money.
No, I wouldn't do that. But like the value of maybe him working out is still higher than just.
I
I mean,
agree.
um, man, I think I think what's so tough about their team, like they have good players. So like you do want to say, okay, well, this is a good blow up candidate. They have players of value, but to be honest, like a lot of the young guys, like you're not gonna want to give those guys up, right? Like you're not gonna want to give up
Right.
Jordan Hawkins or guys like Trey Murphy or whoever, Brandon Boston maybe, but like the players who are good, it's like CJ McCollum, who like where's his market, right? Like
It's in the dumpster. And I like CJ, but he's just older. He can't defend. He's really just a shooter now, and he's making 30 million next season. It's not even like he's an expiring.
right. So I'm almost thinking that maybe you just suck. Maybe this is your year from hell. This is your year from hell. You just take your good pick and take a really good prospect who can either you know play alongside Zion if that works out, or can is good enough to be a number one type of guy. So I think that's probably the play. Honestly, I don't even think that. Yeah, I don't think blowing it up is maybe the right play. Maybe get maybe another asset or two, but I think ultimately you just suck. You just have a season from hell. You get your high pick and you kind of reassess. I think the big question is still Brandon Ingram. You do have to answer this because you don't want to lose him for nothing. But sometimes I feel like um, losing a player for nothing, and I guess I'm saying this because my team has championship aspirations, but giving a player to a good team at an incredible value just because you don't want to lose them, sometimes that seems not right. Like you're kind of shaking up the NBA like in a weird way. Like don't give away a
Mhm.
player of Brandon Ingram's caliber. Like he's really good. If somebody like has the right infrastructure for him and can figure that out, like he can be a really good player. I watched I watched Brandon Ingram play the Lakers when he was the only player that they had. Like all the other guys were out, and they had a bunch of nobodies. And man, I kind of started to kind of re-fall in love with that guy. The way he was communicating, he was telling literally every possession he had to tell everybody where to go, every play. And the Pels were in that game to pretty much the end. So like Ingram's still a good player. He's an awkward fit, which makes us kind of go too far with where he is. But if they gave him away to a good team, like that would be it would be tough.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it. I think like a lot of guys that just don't naturally fit, we kind of start to underrate them, and I think part of it too with Ingram is fans and analysts can so clearly see the optimized version of his game where he's taking
Yes.
more threes, he's getting to the basket, he's using his length on defense. You can see that, and he doesn't do it. And we can get into why that is or why it isn't. And I think that makes people not appreciate what he still is good at because we so want him to be this optimized version of himself. But yeah, I thought you made a good point about the conversation of letting guys walk for nothing because there are alternative paths that can also be damaging. Like if you trade Brandon Ingram away for people making, let's say two contracts making about the same amount of money for the same amount of time or like for longer, it's like, okay, now you just tied up your salary cap for two guys that are both half as good as Brandon Ingram. Or, like the Heat felt motivated to trade Kyle Lowry, so they traded him and a first round pick to get Terry Rozier. They'd probably undo that now if they could, but they felt like, oh, we have this $30 million expiring contract. We have to do something with it. But sometimes, you see the Clippers, like they're probably happy they don't have Paul George on a 5-year max right now.
Yes.
And they got
Yes. Great
go
point.
for it. They're like, why didn't you trade him? You let him walk for nothing. Yeah, it's not optimal. Ideally, they would have traded him at the trade deadline last season,
Sure.
but that's the sunk cost fallacy. You don't have to be like, well, we have to do. You don't have to. You
Yeah.
can just let him walk. So, yeah, I think Ingram could definitely help a good team, though. I just think, I don't.
Can I make
Clearly,
one
the
more
deal
point
isn't there now.
about Ingram? Uh,
Mhm.
do you remember in 22 when the Dubs were making their run? I think this happened in the playoffs. I think
Mhm.
I think Wiggins had like a really good game or something where he had grabbed a bunch of boards and he was like, just all over the glass that entire
Mhm.
season, really. And there was a press conference after one of those games, and one of the reporters was like, "Man, like Wiggins, like how come you didn't do this your whole career?" He's like, I
Mhm.
don't know. It's just like I think Ingram has some of that potential where he kind of goes to the right team and he's like locking dudes up. And like Ingram, bro, wow, you're like really one of the best defenders in basketball. How come you haven't been doing this? I don't
Yeah.
know. It's-
It could be, and honestly, I mean, to me, I think ultimately Ingram probably does get traded. If I had to guess how it happens is right now there aren't teams willing to give up a lot for him because they don't know if they want to sign him. Closer to the deadline, I think teams will want to make some all-in moves, and they'll be
Mhm,
like, "Listen, we're not gonna give up that much for him. We're basically gonna pay for him as if he's a rental, and then
mhm,
he has to prove to us he's worthy of this next contract."
mhm,
And that could work out perfectly where he's playing as hard and as well as he's ever played because he's like, I need to reestablish I'm a max guy. Like, I got a rookie max extension. Now I want my veteran max. So that's what I could see happening.
come home, Brandon. Come home. No, I don't even know if we have any
Listen, I was gonna
basketball.
ask you. I mean, might as well. Would you? What are you giving up? I don't. I mean, is the matching salary Rui and D'Lo? Are you doing that in a first for Ingram?
Well, see, the thing was that when Ingram left, or when he was traded, but when he was traded, it was like, well, listen, he's a really good player, but at the same time, if we have LeBron, like, when was he going to be able to blossom? Like, he wouldn't have been able to become that. Now, with like you watch how LeBron plays, and like he's taking a big step back, and he's perfectly willing to let a guy like Ingram handle the ball and really get involved. So that would definitely be interesting. And the Lakers love bringing back their old players. It's one of their favorite things in the world. So that would be interesting. I'm really high on Ingram. I think Ingram is still really good, and I think that if he gets traded, I think he's going to help somebody. So
Yeah. I hope he does. I feel a kind of similar way about Levine. I feel like because of the contract and the injuries, people have kind of underrated him, and he's balling this year. Like if he gets traded to a good team, I think people are going to be like, "Whoa, this guy, he
I, th-
makes too much money, but he's very good."
I think the thing about Levine is that I feel like he almost just fits best now on the Bulls. Like doesn't he
That's
just belong in
fair.
the Bulls now? Like I was just like
That's
it's
fair.
probably
And
his
I,
best.
I honestly would not be shocked if we just got like a Levine extension tweet from Shams. Like I just feel like, yep, that's about
I
right. Like,
understand, but that's scummy. But I do
yep,
understand it.
yep, I can see it. Yeah, the Pels will be interesting, man. I mean, it's weird. Like you probably don't trade Dejounte Murray after you just got him, but you
Yeah.
do know there are teams interested in him. Like they probably know what they had to outbid guys for. CJ, I don't think you trade CJ because I think you'd have to attach like a pick or something. I don't think people are taking on, a year and a half of CJ at 30 million a year.
It's tough, man. If they had kept Dyson Daniels, because he's really good, and then Jordan Hawkins is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Like
Yep.
they could sneaky kind of have something.
Yeah.
Um,
Hindsight, you think you rolling out like Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels, Trey Murphy, like
Woo!
that's some good
Wow,
wings. Yeah.
wow,
But
yeah,
yeah, that trade looks rough right now. But honestly,
yeah.
don't all DeJounte Murray trades look rough like 6 months after they happen?
Listen, this is why I started this whole topic by asking about David Griffin. Um, he earned his reputation in Cleveland back when LeBron was
Hmm.
there, and he got to kind of come in after the Pels had fired their old GM for kind of botching the Anthony Davis trade, and he got to look like a hero because he got all these
Right.
pieces, and it was like I remember Chris Mannix was like the Pelicans are going to make the playoffs before the Lakers do, and that
Hmm.
didn't work out so well, but the trade was looked very favorably on,
Hmm.
and now maybe not so much, but yeah, I think David Griffin may not be the guy for this job because this is a task to fix what's going on
Yeah.
there.
No doubt. Yeah, it honestly reminds me a lot of Memphis's season last year, like with Marcus Smart kind of being the DeJounte Murray, and then just
Mhm.
everyone got hurt, and they're like, "Well, we just got to play young guys and hope we get a good pick." I think Memphis ended up getting like the eighth pick. I think that's what Edie was, and that was in a weaker draft. Like the eighth pick in this draft will be like probably a very good prospect. So
For sure.
that'll probably be what it ends up being, and maybe they get a couple extra picks or prospects if they're able to trade Ingram for something. So. Do you have any other Pels thoughts before we close out there?
Um, nah, man. I think well, with the way the lottery is now, the Pels could easily get the number one overall pick, to be completely honest. But
Yeah, they could.
way it
But
works.
that's
But
the thing. I mean, the Hawks got it last year. They were a playing team. Like,
right,
you could. There's always a chance. You might as well give yourself that chance. And
right. But no, yeah,
yeah,
that's about all I had on the Pellies.
yeah, and guys, I mean, we always try and give a good mix of on court talk and transaction talk. But I will say, episodes like this, they get you excited for the trade deadline.
I do.
We're only about 2 weeks away from December 15th, which is when pretty much all of the league becomes trade eligible. So, we're already seeing talks about teams are calling around about different centers. Like I said earlier, Chicago is definitely open for business. So
Yeah.
it's going to be fun to see what kind of starts to trickle through, and
How's that thing in
how
Minnesota going? Ugh.
right, exactly. I would not like Caelan. I think you said this when the trade happened, but Randall and DiVincenzo could definitely be traded this year. Like
Yes.
it looks rough over
It
there. So
does. It really does.
it looks, and your superstar's upset. That's always the number one alarm bell. Edwards seems angry about how things are going, and that's the one person you got to keep happy. So we'll see. I don't know who Anthony Edwards is buddies with, but watch out for them as a trade target for Minnesota because they're going to try and keep that guy happy. Cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This is a fun episode, little holiday edition for you guys. We'll be coming back with another episode next week. As always, check us out on all our social medias. If you listen to this on a podcast feed, it's also available on YouTube. Check us out on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. And for myself, Micah, my fellow friend and host, Caelan, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you all next week.